He said he wanted to be a highway patrol officer so that he can legally hit minorities. How does someone who swore a sacred oath to serve and to protect become the one whom you should fear the most? I remember the moment like a flash of lightning in a midnight sky, sudden, blinding, and impossible to ignore. I was hunched over my desk in the dim glow of the supply office, my name tag still clipped to my uniform, when two unfamiliar men in cruiser blue uniforms strode in. One wore dark-tinted sunglasses. The other's badge caught the fluorescent light, glinting as if winking at me. They asked casually, almost politely, "Who's in charge here?" I should have said my supervisor, Sergeant Reynolds, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I swallowed hard and replied, "That'd be me. Text Sergeant Jordan Miller." Their question wasn't harmless small talk. It was the harbinger of everything I'd been waiting for. You see, a few months earlier, I'd overheard Reynolds boasting about his dream job. "I want to be a highway patrol officer so I can legally hit minorities." He'd laughed about it. Crude jokes about Mexicans, black folks. They were his idea of humor. And I, an African-American airman with a spotless record of perfect attendance and immaculate uniforms, was his direct target behind every closed door. My heart pounded in my ears. This was my shot, not at revenge, but at truth. I can still taste the stale air of that office, the metallic tang of fluorescent lights, the weight of my years of notes stored on that battered floppy disk in my breast pocket. 2 pages, front and back, of Reynolds's own words, meticulously dated. This was what I'd been building toward, piece by piece, memo by memo, since the first time he'd shrugged off my superior performance in favor of that screw-up Tommy. In that instant, standing before 2 state patrol officers, I realized all those late nights cataloging his racist tirades, all those suppressed memos collecting dust, it had a purpose. The punches I never threw, the doors I never slammed in his face, it was all leading to this moment of reckoning. And as I pressed play on my disk drive, bracing for the sound of groans as ancient technology spun into life, I knew the scales were about to tip. I'm Jordan Miller, 55 years old, born in Tulsa, Oklahoma. In the early 90s, I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, eager to serve my country and carve out a career defined by discipline and integrity. By 1992, I had risen to technical sergeant, overseeing the supply office at Eagle Point Air Base in Wichita, Kansas. My evaluations were consistently solid, if not stellar, reflecting my unwavering punctuality, meticulous attention to detail, and willingness to take on any extra task. I arrived before dawn, double-checked every invoice and inventory slip, and often stayed late to ensure the next day's shipments would roll out seamlessly. Yet, beneath that veneer of order lurked a rod I couldn't ignore. Sergeant Reynolds, my immediate superior, who seemed to delight in wielding his authority to belittle anyone who didn't fit his narrow view of acceptable. He was a career non-com who dodged deployments, yet claimed the mantle of seasoned leader. He monitored performance reviews like a hawk, but only to clip the wings of those who threatened his fragile ego. I first sensed the injustice during our quarterly evaluations. The Air Force used a scale of 1 to 5. 5 meant exceptional performance beyond any doubt. 3 signified adequate, meet standards. That quarter, Tommy Alvarez earned a perfect 5. Tommy, who chronically arrived late, slurred his words in formation, and once spent a weekend in the county clink after a bar fight. Meanwhile, I received a 3, despite having never missed a deadline, maintaining spotless uniforms, and training 2 new airmen to the point they outranked me in proficiency. My pride stung, but I chalked it up to miscommunication. Then, overhearing Reynolds one cloudy afternoon changed everything. I'm eyeing the Kansas Highway Patrol next. Imagine the power. I can slap cuffs on any brown-faced scum I please, legally. His laughter echoed through the break room. I remember my stomach dropping, my hands turning clammy around my coffee mug. Every racist slur he'd whispered since I arrived coalesced into a single moment of clarity. He wasn't just unfair, he was dangerous. From that day, I began keeping daily logs. February 1st, 1992, Reynolds made a crack about those monkey jokes, while we inventoried spare parts. February 12th, 1992. He publicly reprimanded me for a bookkeeping typo, then pinned a commendation ribbon on Tommy the next morning, though Tommy had botched the same report. March 3rd, 1992. Overheard blacks and Mexicans need a firm hand. Recorded it verbatim in my MPen journal. These details filled the 2 pages of my Reynolds file. Each entry contained date, time, witness names, everything that would withstand scrutiny. At home, my wife, Lisa, a civilian nurse, noticed the stress etched in my face. I'd confide in her over countless dinners. He's planning to parlay his uniform into street power. I can't sit by while he climbs the ranks to enforce his hatred. She urged me to report it formally, but I feared the chain of command would protect their own. Too many lives would be ruined if Reynolds slipped through the cracks. So each day, I balanced 2 worlds. 1. By daylight, I managed supplies, trained new recruits, and kept morale afloat. 2. By moonlight, I transcribed audio logs, backed up floppy disk files, and drafted letters to base leadership, letters that vanished into bureaucratic voids. Every time Reynolds praised Tommy's natural aptitude, I felt my resolve harden. He might control the present. I would safeguard the future. From the moment I first grasped how deep Reynolds's prejudice ran, tension rippled through every routine task. But the true breaking point happened during our monthly readiness drill, when principles clash with reality and you're forced to take a stand. It began at 0630 hours with the screech of alarms across Eagle Point's bleary tarmac. I was already at my station in the supply hangar, my boots polished, uniform crisp, when Reynolds stomped in, barking orders. His method was simple: slice away stress with scalding criticism, then reward perceived loyalty with public praise. That morning, he strutted past me to confront Airman Alvarez, the same screw-up who'd bafflingly earned a perfect score last quarter. Tommy stood by the open cargo bay, half asleep, clutching a clipboard upside down. "Get your head in the game, Airman," Reynolds barked. Then, turning on his heel, he nodded approvingly, hands on hips. But he paused dramatically. "You've got the right attitude. Keep it up." Alvarez's face lit up like a kid on Christmas, but I could taste bile in my mouth. Meanwhile, when my own meticulous inventory report fell a mere 2 items short of perfection, he circled back to me with that familiar smirk. "Text Sergeant Miller, item counts off by 2. We can't afford sloppiness." He clipped a 3 rating to my file on the spot, right next to Alvarez's shining 5. 2 days later, I witnessed how anthropological prejudice infects policy. In the cramped briefing room, whiteboard scrawled with supply allocations and deployment turnovers, Reynolds launched into a discussion on resource shortages. "We have to tighten the belt. Rations are down 15%. That's on you. Miller, make those numbers work." As I parsed spreadsheets, I overheard him mutter under his breath, "Wouldn't mind seeing some of those foreign trash types sent packing." My pen hovered midair. He caught me looking, raised an eyebrow, and smirked. I felt the sting of raw derision, but I swallowed it and filed the line in my journal. March 17th, 1992, 0905 HRS. Foreign trash, comment during budget briefing. I'd saved every line like precious currency, each detail a voucher against injustice. Spring in Kansas means unpredictable weather and surprise inspections. That day, the base commander's team stormed into the hangar to audit our records. My heart hammered. This was my chance to shine. I'd prepared binder no. A14. Invoices, shipping manifests, cross-checked serial numbers, every page immaculate. Reynolds, by contrast, had left gaps in his subordinates' reports, omissions that would land anyone else in hot water. But under his watch, no one corrected them. When the auditors complimented my binder, "Excellent work," I dared to meet his eyes. He offered a thin-lipped smile, nodding with forced approval, then whisked the praise away from me. Glad to see my team performing. Especially those, who show loyalty. His gaze flicked to Alvarez, who winked and gave a thumbs up. The cold aftertaste of that moment convinced me. He wasn't just robbing me of due credit. He was systematically erasing my worth. As weeks passed, I noticed whispers in the corridor. Why is Miller always complaining? He can't take a joke? Rumors swirled that I was difficult, a troublemaker. Reynolds had become adept at performing two roles. One, public face, the affable sergeant punting jokes and camaraderie. Two, private tyrant, the same man unleashing vile slurs in private moments. To most, he was just joking around. But in hushed tones, I heard recruits whisper. He called me a wetback for asking for extra gloves. He told me black airmen don't belong in supply. They're better off in kitchen detail. I cataloged each allegation, even those I overheard secondhand. By now, my journal bulged with at least 20 documented incidents, enough to fill the 2 floppy disk pages I carried everywhere. In the morning of May 1st, 1992, fresh coffee in hand, I resolved to confront Reynolds directly. In the break room, I found him leaning against the counter, mid-laugh with another NCO. Can you believe civilians think we're heroes? More like rent-a-killers. I stepped forward. Sergeant Reynolds, I'd like to talk about these comments you've made. They cross a line. His smile flickered, then hardened into a sneer. Look, Carter, lighten up. It's all in good fun. If you can't take it, maybe you're too sensitive. He tossed his mug into the sink and strode away. That was the moment I realized. No direct appeal would work. My only path was to compile everything, every hateful word, every unfair rating, and hand it to someone who would listen without bias. With the Reynolds file nearing a complete dossier, and my frustration reaching a simmering boil, the stakes only rose. Every day held a new skirmish in this unseen war, each skirmish adding fuel to my resolve. May 10th, 1992. That morning, I expected to find my set of calibrated torque wrenches neatly stored in my locker. Instead, the case lay open on the workbench, tools missing. These weren't ordinary wrenches. They'd been custom-ordered, costing hundreds of dollars, essential for maintaining critical aircraft components. I felt a sharp spike of anger, not just at the theft, but at the realization that someone in my own unit would brazenly violate basic trust. I launched an inquiry report, detailing when I'd last seen the tools, May 3rd, 1742 HRS, and when they went missing overnight. Reynolds feigned concern. Let's keep it professional, Miller. I'll talk to the crew. But the investigation went nowhere. Alvarez, the prime suspect, denied involvement, and Reynolds seemed uninterested in pressing the issue. I filed the incident as another logged grievance. May 10th, 1992, missing torque wrenches case opened. No resolution. May 18th, 1992, a routine check of the airman's store records revealed something odd, an unapproved $120 charge to my allotment for canteen supplies. Reviewing the logs, I discovered that Alvarez had used my identification code to purchase snacks during a week-long leave, without paying me back. My letters requesting reimbursement vanished into thin air. Reynolds nodded sympathetically, but did nothing to rectify the misuse. Mistakes happen, text Sergeant. Just cover it this time. I jot down. May 18th, 1992, unauthorized $120 canteen purchase. No accountability. Once a month, the Air Force hosted a base social, a chance to unwind in the rec hall. That night, the room buzzed with laughter, country music on the speakers, and poker games at folding tables. Reynolds held court near the snack bar, beers in hand, regaling junior airmen with war stories. His keynote joke, I tell you, one more brown-faced comments, and I'll personally escort them off base by the scruff of their neck. A hush fell around him. Some chuckled awkwardly. Others glanced at me in embarrassment. My jaw clenched. I approached his group. Sergeant, those jokes aren't professional. They make people uncomfortable. One of the patrol officers from last month's visit, Officer Reyes, the Hispanic officer, happened to be there, attending in civilian clothes. His eyes narrowed behind dark lenses. Reynolds sneered. Oh, look who's come to virtue signal. Unless you're becoming my lawyer, stay quiet. Officer Reyes's expression shifted. He recognized me from the supply office. He stepped forward and offered a gentle, let's talk in private, Mr. Miller. An unspoken alliance. I refused, returning to my table. but the seed of solidarity took root. By mid-June, my folder contained a web of incidents: missing tools, stolen funds, racist quips, unfair ratings. I'd learned two truths. 1. Reynolds manipulates perception by rewarding the incompetent and punishing the diligent. 2. The chain of command shields him under the guise of unit cohesion. One evening, I called my wife and explained my plan. "Lisa, I'm going to approach those state patrol guys again. I need to ensure they see the whole Reynolds, the man behind the jokes." She worried about my career, but I was resolute. My conscience demanded it. I intentionally scheduled supply duty on the day the Kansas Highway Patrol recruitment van pulled onto base for a routine outreach. I stood by the entrance, pressed a copy of my dossier into Officer Reyes's hand, and said simply, "You need to know what he's really like." He nodded gravely and slipped it into his jacket pocket. When Corporal Mitchell, the black patrol trainee, passed by, I caught his eye and added, "There's more, records, logs." Asked for my disc. He gave a subtle salute, and I returned to work, heart racing. In storytelling, the turning point is where the protagonist sheds doubt and commits fully to action. For me, it happened in the quiet hours, when daylight's distractions fall away, and the weight of every slight and injustice lands like a physical blow. One night, I couldn't sleep. The bunk room was silent, save for the distant hum of the air conditioning unit and the occasional creak of settling metal. I found myself in the small galley kitchen, flipping on the overhead light. The clock glowed 2:30 a.m. I poured strong black coffee into a chipped mug and sank into one of the swivel stools. In the lamplight, my uniform's creases looked suddenly absurd, symbols of a system that prized order over justice. I ran my fingers over the battered floppy disk in my pocket, then set it on the counter with a soft click. My mind replayed every humiliating review meeting, every stolen wrench, every slur that hadn't been spoken in the open but etched into my memory. I thought of Tommy's smug grin, of Reynolds's theatrical praise, and of Officer Reyes's solemn nod when I first handed him my notes. A single truth crystallized: I couldn't let this continue. As steam curled from my mug, I made a vow. "Jordan, tomorrow, you stop waiting for permission. You hand everything to the State Patrol. No more backing down." I opened my journal and wrote the date in neat, deliberate script. July 5th, 1992, decision made. No more silence. Then I updated my timeline. July 6th, 0800 hours. Meet with Officer Reyes at the supply hangar. July 6th, 0830 hours. Escort patrol brass through evidence. I mapped each step, assigning times, noting which documents I'd present first: performance reviews, journal entries, missing tool reports, culminating with the 2-page disk's testimony of Reynolds's own words. By dawn, I was back on duty, but my demeanor had shifted. Instead of forcing a smile, I walked with purpose. At 0750 hours, I found Reyes leaning against the loading dock's yellow-striped floor, his driver's cap black against the rising sun. "Ready?" I asked. "Ready," he replied, snapping to attention. Inside the hangar's wide-open doors, I set up a small makeshift table. On it, I laid out: 1. My Reynolds file binder, performance reports, tool theft inquiries, unauthorized charges. 2. Floppy disk in its protective sleeve. 3. Journal excerpts with verbatim racist comments, witness names, dates. At 0830 hours, 2 higher-ups from the Highway Patrol, 1 Caucasian captain and 1 Hispanic lieutenant, joined Reyes. Their badges caught the light as they filed in. "Text Sergeant Miller," the captain began. "We appreciate you making time." His tone was polite, but I saw in his posture a readiness to judge. I launched into my presentation. "Sir, ma'am, I served 6 years at Eagle Point. My performance record is unblemished, yet my former supervisor, this man," I gestured to the empty spot where Reynolds's chair should have been, "publicly praised an incompetent airman over me while he targeted me with racist comments. I'm here to show you why he's unfit for the Kansas Highway Patrol." I spoke steadily, moving through each exhibit. Exhibit A, the quarterly review pages showing Tommy's surprising 5 next to my honest 3. Exhibit B, photocopies of my investigation requests, missing torque wrenches, mischarged canteen funds. Exhibit C, journal pages with quotes, legally hit minorities, wetback trash. Exhibit D, the 2-page disc, Reynolds's own words in his handwriting. As I slid the disc across the table, the Hispanic lieutenant's brow furrowed. He loaded it into a portable drive, I scanning line after line. The captain nodded, flipping between documents. The silence stretched. Then the captain cleared his throat. Tech Sergeant Miller, this is comprehensive. We will take this under advisement. He offered a curt handshake. It wasn't a victory celebration, but it was acknowledgement. Walking back to my station, the adrenaline drained, leaving me hollow with anticipation. I'd crossed the line, no turning back. By noon, I resumed my duties, every paperwork shuffle and radio call, a reminder of what I'd risked. Reynolds's replacement, a soft-spoken master sergeant, paused by my locker. I hear you've been proactive. Keep it up. His discreet thumbs up felt like a small triumph. News travels fast on a base. By mid-morning, a hushed ripple ran through the cafeteria. Whispers of my meeting had preceded me. He actually showed them the files. Reynolds got turned down, didn't he? I heard he's back at Walmart. I sat at my usual table, trying to finish a ham and cheese sandwich, but the bread tasted like sawdust. My nerves twanged with every sideways glance. Suddenly, a tall figure in civilian clothes approached. It was Lieutenant Alvarez, not Tommy, but the Hispanic lieutenant from the patrol visit. He glanced around, then lowered his voice. Jordan, they've officially denied Reynolds' application. And they've flagged his file, won't ever consider him for patrol. A flush of relief warmed me, yet I felt a pang of something darker, vindication mixed with sorrow. Reynolds' career, built on uniforms and authority, lay in tatters. But the cost had been nearly everything I'd known. Comfort, trust, certainty. Before I could respond, a ripple of commotion drew my eyes upward. At a small podium someone had set up near the serving line, the base commander stood, clearing his throat. I recognized his clipped tone. Attention, all personnel. We've received notice from the Kansas Highway Patrol regarding Sergeant Reynolds' application. Effective immediately, all references to Eagle Point in his record are null and void. I thank Tech Sergeant Miller for his diligence in pursuing the facts. A round of polite applause followed, though I could feel the tension, some officers uneasy, others quietly proud. I stood, nodded, and returned to my seat, heart pounding. This moment, I knew, would echo through every chatter of supply clerks and lunch lines for weeks to come. 2 months later, the dust settled enough for me to receive an official memo. Tech Sergeant Jordan Miller, in recognition of your outstanding service and integrity, you are hereby awarded the Air Force Commendation Medal. Your actions have upheld the core values of integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. The medal ceremony was intimate. My wife Lisa, a handful of fellow airmen, and the base commander. As the ribbon settled on my uniform, I felt a deep swell of affirmation. The uniform meant something again. That same afternoon, a small cadre of officers gathered in the Quonset hut. Among them stood Sergeant Reynolds, accompanied by his new supervisor from the base warehouse. He appeared gaunt, his shoulders hunched, staring at the floor. No more booming laughter, no Dobby swagger, just a man unmoored. I caught his eye for a brief second. There was no hatred there, only the hollow look of someone who'd lost more than a job. I nodded respectfully, then turned away, my heart tight. Justice had been served, but the cost, broken careers, frayed trust, would linger. By fall, the seasons had shifted, and with them, my life too. The air held a crispness that contrasted sharply with the tension of summer. On this evening, I sat at my kitchen table with Lisa, unpacking the small white envelope that bore the seal of the Air Force Personnel Center. Inside lay my Air Force Commendation Medal citation for exemplary courage in upholding core values and safeguarding the reputation of the U.S. Air Force through persistent integrity and tireless dedication to duty. We poured 2 glasses of iced tea, and I read the citation aloud. Each word felt heavy with vindication and relief. Lisa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You did what was right, Jordan. They finally saw it. I smiled, but my mind drifted to Reynolds, to Tommy Alvarez, and to every skewed rating and stolen wrench. Achievement came with its own bittersweet aftertaste. In the weeks that followed, I noticed subtle shifts around base. Airmen's confidence restored. New recruits asked for my guidance, encouraged by my medal ceremony. Improved oversight. A policy revision mandated anonymous feedback for supervisors. My logs were credited as the catalyst. A new era in the supply office. Master Sergeant Hannah Reeves took over as my direct superior. Her leadership style blended firmness with fairness. Under her, tool thefts plummeted, and the canteen fund was audited monthly. One morning in early November, I found a small sticky note on my locker. Thanks for making a difference, SSGT Alvarez. I chuckled. Even the former Perfect Five kid recognized justice when he saw it. Late one afternoon, as leaves tumbled along the sidewalks, I ran into Master Sergeant Reynolds in the hall outside the supply hangar. His posture was straighter than I remembered, no longer feigning authority, but carrying the weight of his own failings. He paused, looked at me for a long moment, and finally said, "Text Sergeant Miller about what happened." "I'm sorry." His voice was low and unsteady. I studied him. This man whose casual cruelty had nearly derailed my career and who had cost others their dignity. "I don't need an apology," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Just let it be a lesson." He nodded once, turned, and walked away. In that moment, I recognized that some wounds heal not by forgetting, but by acknowledgement and action. By year's end, I'd been offered a position as logistics chief at a newly established joint operations unit overseas. The challenge, and the opportunity to set a positive standard, was too good to pass up. Lisa and I spent Christmas packing, hearts full of anticipation. On December 28, 1992, I pinned my commendation medal over my heart one last time on Eagle Point's parade ground. As the crisp air caught the ribbon, I saluted the flag, then turned to Lisa and our small circle of friends. "Onward," I said, and with that, we stepped into the next chapter together.